Hey everybody, just wanted to jump in real quick before the webinar starts and let you all know that the slides from today's presentation are in the description below. If you want to check those out, has a lot of good information on there from Patrick Lane from CompTIA. We also have some resources from CompTIA and InfoSec detailing the exact changes between the 002 and 003 version of the exam. And then we have a link to our CYSA Plus resource hub. So if you're looking for additional resources on salary, job information, how to prepare for the exam, all that kind of stuff. I encourage you to check that out. And if you're looking for live training to help you prepare for the exam, InfoSec is authorized CompTIA training partner. That's why we're doing this webinar with them. We're one of their top partners in the US. So we have a 5-day boot camp to help prepare for the Cybersecurity Analyst Plus certification. So be sure to check that out. With that, I will throw it over to the webinar so you can all check it out. This webinar is about the new version of the CYSA Plus exam, which went into effect on June 2023. And the old version, the 002 version, is good until December 5th, 2023, and then that one retires. So if you're watching this before December 5th, there's actually two different versions of the exam you can take. It's up to you, but then once you get to past December 2023, everyone will be taking this new version of the exam for the next 3 years. All right, let's jump into it.
So hello everyone. Let's go and ask ourselves, what is CompTIA CYSA Plus? So CYSA Plus stands for Cybersecurity Analyst, and that would be the name if you were to write it out. And that's because this certification, CompTIA CYSA Plus, is covering the skills required to be a security analyst. And a security analyst is the job role I just said, it's growing 35% over the next 10 years, and that is huge. It's also important to understand when security analyst job role first became very popular around 2015, 2016, after some of the huge cybersecurity breaches that we saw back in 2014. If you remember the Target hack, the Democratic National Committee was also hacked. There was a lot of hacks that had occurred for the first time that we'd seen on a global scale that affected everyone. I mean, Home Depot was hacked. Just it seemed like all of our big companies in the U.S. and our agencies were attacked all of a sudden. And what they realized was that, what we need are security analysts, because security analysts are the ones that can detect these, a hack. They can detect malicious activity and then report on it, hopefully before any information has been, exfiltrated. And so another reason why this job is so popular is just because the pay is quite good. The average pay for someone who does this job is over 100,000, so it's 103 median pay in 2021. And then there's about 31,000 job openings right now as well. So, that's why we created this cert, is essentially there's a huge demand for it, because the job role is in huge demand. And so the cert, as you can see here, it assesses the security analyst and incident response analyst skills needed to prevent, detect, and respond to cybersecurity threats on networks and devices. And so if you pass this exam, you've basically proven that you have the skills that someone who's been working as a security analyst for 4 years would have on a day-to-day basis. So this certification can give you a head start of the knowledge, skills, and abilities. It cannot give you a head start in experience. And so that is something that you'll have to go out and get yourself if you're not already there, because this is an intermediate level certification, which means it's in the 3 to 4 year range in someone's career, as opposed to other certs that are, before and after that, which we'll cover in the pathway in just a moment, the career pathway. And so CYSA Plus, what does it do? We can see the third bullet here. It focuses on a candidate's ability to proactively identify, monitor, and respond to security incidents, but also emphasizes software and application security, automation, threat hunting, reporting, and communication. And we update the exam every 3 years because we need to make sure that it's up to date with the latest technology, the latest skills. Also, this certification is ISO ANSI 17024 accredited, and therefore it has a continuing education requirement. So anyone who gets this certification has to renew every 3 years. And that can be done through either taking the exam again or doing CE activities that you can take to get it, to re-earn the cert. But what that also requires us to do is completely revise the exam every 3 years to make sure that it's up to date. So that's one of the benefits of having this as an ISO ANSI accredited exam for you, is because it shows employers, that you have up-to-date skills that they require and are hiring for. Some of the job roles that use this certification are incident response analysts, SOC analysts, vulnerability management analysts, security engineers, and threat hunters. These are all people that use the skills that are found in CYSA Plus. SOC analysts, I just would like to make a quick note on that. SOC means a Security Operations Center, and a Security Operations Center is often, it's either a platform where security analysts work, or it could be a physical location where security analysts work. And that's where they do the day-to-day operations of trying to monitor a network proactively to find basically any evidence of malicious activity and then report on that. So let's go through and just learn a little bit more about what's covered in CompTIA CySA Plus. Basically, if you pass this exam, then you would have verified that you have the knowledge and skills required to detect and analyze indicators of malicious activity. And essentially what this is, in order to detect and analyze indicators of malicious activity, you have to employ continuous security monitoring on your network. You have to be monitoring constantly for activity that could indicate malicious activity. And so you're constantly monitoring using various tools that are available for security analysts, such as security information and event management systems, SIMs, and other tools that we'll be talking about in a moment. Another thing is understanding threat hunting and threat intelligence concepts and then comparing them. This is very important because threat hunting and threat intelligence they give us the ability to predict who's going to attack us and how they might attack us. So we can actually defend ourselves before they've attacked us based on the profile of our industry and profile of the, malicious actors, we could say, in that area. And so what we have to do then is use tools like the MITRE Navigator to determine what industry we're in. And then we can determine who's going to be attacking us based on that industry. We can determine, like if we're in finance, we could even determine the services they're going to be attacking, how they're going to employ those attacks, and then offers a playbook on how you can actually defend against those attacks before they've even occurred. Third area, use appropriate tools, methods to manage, prioritize, and respond to attacks and vulnerabilities. This is very important because the tools that are available for information security analysts, they've really been modernizing fast to include things like automation and other various even in threat hunting and threat intelligence are kind of built into them now, where you can just bring in a feed directly into the SIM. And so there are so many ways that it's converging. But essentially, these tools such as SIMs and various SIMs are things like IBM's. IBM has QRadar. As a matter of fact, if you want to get the QRadar certification from IBM, CYSA Plus is one of their requirements. They actually require CYSA Plus to get the the core information security analyst knowledge, and then you take their QRadar cert that just teaches the specifics of the tool. And so in this certification, we teach you how to use the basics of a SIM. And so you could go out and use, you could go out and use Splunk, you could go out and use Logarithm, you could go out and use QRadar, you could go out and use a multitude of different SIMs, which is probably the main tool that security analysts use out in the industry, because CYSA Plus teaches you the vendor neutral concepts of how a SIM works. So you can then apply that on a vendor specific tool. Also perform incident response processes. Incident response is one of the key tasks of a security analyst, responding to the incident in order to mitigate it. In other words, in order to lessen the effect of whatever is occurring. And so if you find that you have potential breach on your network, perhaps you can respond by isolating those systems, as well as reporting and communicating what's going on with other teams, so you can a team can help to resolve the issue if necessary through ticketing systems, for example. And then lastly, understanding reporting and communication concepts related to vulnerability management and incident response activities. And so you have to report what you're working on all the time as a security analyst. The reason is because the work that you're doing is very important to regulatory, usually. If your company is under some kind of regulation, you will likely have to do reporting that would show how secure your company is. Or for instance, let's say you're responsible for GDPR, where you have to actually store all of your customers' information, in Europe. One of the things that a lot of these regulations require are just statistics on your on trends in your networks. And so it's like they are going to want to know how many how are you affected, how many breaches have you had, how many incidents are you responding to. They're going to want to know statistics, and so they can help determine how cyber secure, or what the essentially what the security posture of your company is. So these reports are critical, and a lot of them come from the security analysts because they can show trends, trends in, as I just mentioned, and we'll go over a few of those trends in a bit. All right, well, those first two slides were quite a doozy. That they covered a lot of information. So I'm going to be able to go through the next a bit quicker. But this is quite the certification. So CYSA Plus job roles. The primary job roles we're covering are security analyst, security operations center analyst, and incident response analyst. Basically, when we did the job task analysis, the tasks, the KSAs, knowledge, skills, and abilities that are taught in this certification, are covering the full-time tasks for those work roles. Secondary job roles are work roles that use these tasks part-time. So we find vulnerability management analysts need to know security analyst skills, because they're searching for vulnerabilities, which involves running vulnerability assessments, which is a big part of the security analyst job role, doing automation with those types of vulnerability assessments. Security engineers, that's very important because security engineers are responsible often for setting up a SIM. SIMs are very complex to set up. You have to have log feeds from every system that you wish to monitor. And so that requires installing an agent, having all the information come into a central repository, normalizing that data so that it can be read evenly, because every system is going to be reporting back its log information, possibly in different formats. And so normalizing that data is critical to a SIM. But this requires setting up that system, and security engineers are usually responsible for that, or the infrastructure engineers. It just depends on how your departments are set up. And the other is threat hunter, and I mentioned this earlier. And those are people that use intelligence to try to essentially find attacks, who's going to attack you, and and be able to predict that, and therefore secure your network before you've been attacked by new um, any kind of new attacks that we're not even aware of yet. Recommended experience. We hope that if you're going to be taking this exam, you have Network Plus, Security Plus, or equivalent knowledge, because this is basically a snapshot of 4 years and a hands-on experience as an incident response analyst or security operations analyst or equivalent experience. So everyone we've brought in to help create this exam, that's what was targeted as the area of knowledge or the area of experience. Where so as I said, what this cert is doing is giving you a head start on this job role.
Yes, want to jump in for a second because we do have a couple of questions related to the experience. So two of them, one of them is asking, if they can take the exam without any IT experience. And then another person's asking, says that they're new to cybersecurity, but they do have 10 years of experience in IT as a PM. So any advice for those folks on if they should jump into CySA or start with something different?
Right. Typically, we see people that want to go into CYSA plus, do have some kind of IT background, and the reason is because most people that get a cybersecurity job, or I should say, most people that go into a cybersecurity career, the very first job they get usually doesn't have the word cybersecurity in it. It's usually coming from something like IT project management, as we have here. Or somebody coming in from infrastructure is very common as well. And so one of the things we find is that it's good to have a little bit of experience before you go into the security analyst job role. And so if you want to take this exam, make sure that you at least have perhaps passed Security Plus, because that's going to teach you a lot of the security operations that are going to help you pass CYSA Plus. As far as the IT project management goes, it depends on how familiar with it you are, learning these concepts. And so you'd really have to assess yourself on that. Is someone going into CYSA Plus that really wants to excel? You don't necessarily have to have, to know. Well, I should say you need to know a basics of networking. So you should have like a networking primer. You should understand, how TCP/IP works. You should understand how the OSIRM, how that works, the Open System Interconnect reference model. So you can at least understand how the SIM and how the monitoring is working on the network. Is extremely helpful, because you're actually going to be going out and monitoring, different types of surfaces. In other words, or network architectures. You're going to be monitoring, zero trust architectures. You're going to be, monitoring cloud networks. You're going to be monitoring on-prem networks. In order to do that and to understand what you're looking at, you need to understand how a network works. Extremely helpful. And if you know how to secure that network, such as skills through Security Plus, then you're in a very good situation to take a CYSA Plus. So my only worry is that you were to jump directly into this without having the some of the knowledge from Network Plus and Security Plus, is that you wouldn't grasp the concepts as well as you could, because you wouldn't understand the underpinnings of the network you're working on top of. So that would be my my advice there. But I would probably advise going out and looking at Network Plus and Security Plus, assessing your knowledge of those areas and determining if you need those certs before you go into taking CYSA Plus, if that's the case.
Perfect. Thanks.
Okay. Now, if we look at the CompTIA career pathway on the screen, you'll see where CYSA Plus is placed. It's in the cybersecurity pathway, and it follows Security Plus. So you'll see the core skills that CompTIA offers are the fundamentals. That's ITF Plus, basically. It's an intro into, it teaches you the basics of various areas of IT. So you'll learn a little bit about networking, a little about security, a little bit about devices in ITF Plus, even a little bit about some of the scripting languages and such. And so there's a lot to learn. And then A plus, which covers essentially, how to secure devices and support devices. It's a help desk cert. You wouldn't necessarily need to have all that information in order to pass CYSA plus. But Network Plus, you would need to know the basics of networking. Security Plus, you would need to know the basics of security administration, because there's a whole lot of understanding that you would get in Security Plus, determining about role-based access controls, things that would make a difference when you're analyzing indicators of compromise. Because you're going to see, IP addresses, perhaps you're going to see, different ports that have been compromised and such. And you need to understand, what's a secure port, what's not a secure port, how, and even shutting down ports and such for security as part of incident response. And so it's very important. But Security Plus, just so you know, that basically covers KSAs at about the 2-year point in someone's career. And it covers the main tasks of security administration. After that, we move into the 3 to 4 year areas, and that's when we run into Pentest Plus and CySA Plus. Pentest Plus and CySA Plus could be considered a red team, blue team combination, where Pentest Plus is a red team offensive certification. You're actually going on the attack in Pentest Plus, and you're trying to compromise systems to find their weaknesses so that they can be mitigated. CYSA Plus is about defending the network. So you're actually defending against pen testers in some cases, or those that are trying to attack your network. And so CYSA is a blue team defensive cert, requires you to basically have your monitoring systems in place and try to find out, there's where there's a security alert. We see where the infiltration, is occurring, or where the possible breach is occurring. And then you can be researching it and then try to thwart that attack, mitigate that attack. So it's important to understand the difference is offense, defense, because CYSA Plus is considered a defensive blue team certification. And it's actually in great demand. I didn't mention this earlier, but CYSA Plus is now the 4th most popular certification from CompTIA, and that's saying a lot. It's following A Plus, Network Plus, and Security Plus now. The growth has been phenomenal since 2016, since we launched this, and it's moved into the number 4 spot. And the reason is because that's what employers are asking for, because that's what employers are hiring for. So this is you'll have a very good career trajectory if you go into this cert. So after you get to the 3 to 4 year level, you go into the advanced level. An advanced level is where we get to CASP plus. CASP plus, that's the CompTIA Advanced Security Practitioner exam, 5 years plus, covers architecture skills and senior security engineer skills. So you're looking at security architecture and senior security engineering when you're looking at CASP plus. And this cert is well, I mentioned 5 years up, and so it's considered really the capstone of the cybersecurity pathway.
Great. Yeah, we do have a few questions about different certs on here, so I wanted to ask you a couple questions quick. We had 2 related to more of the offensive side of security. Chad's asking, talking about the level of difficulty for something like the CEH versus the CYSA, so CEH being the Certified Ethical Hacker. And then we also had a question from Stephen about the advantages of being a red team operator and obtaining your CYSA. So can you talk a little bit about maybe if you feel it's worthwhile for people on the red side to pursue the CYSA and how it relates to things like the CEH?
Yes, I think so. So first of all, regarding CEH, yeah, we see that as as far as like where it competes in our pathway. I've seen it try to be a competitor against both Security Plus and CYSA Plus. But if we look at the 2 certs, they are slightly different. They are different certifications. And as far as CEH goes, it's covering the ethical hacking, but it does cover, some Security Plus topics. It covers some of the more basic, like 2-year level skills you might find in security administration. And then it also covers some ethical hacking, which Pentest Plus also covers. And so, what we find is that, perhaps it's a combo of a little bit of Security Plus, a little bit of Pentest Plus. And then we see how they compete. But we don't find any, it's like apples to oranges when we look at CEH, because it's really, very, very specific. And as far as, so anyway, I don't have much more to say about CEH than that. But that's where it might fall in place. It's kind of this gray area. And then when we look at, as far as the skills of someone who's a red team pen tester who wants to have CYSA plus, that's a really good idea to do that. If we look at work, like jobs available, there's 1/3 as many pen testing jobs as there are security analyst jobs. And if you look at the Department of, or if you look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics and industry studies of the security analyst job role, believe it or not, pen testing is actually a subset of the security analyst job role. So if you go up to the, the Outlook, the occupational Outlook handbook from the Department of Labor, for example, you see Pen Test Plus categorized under CYSA Plus. Large part of that is because, vulnerability assessment and actually, attacking systems define the vulnerabilities. Well, that's part of security analyst. However, pen testing is so specialized. I mean, so specialized and exciting. It's fun. You're like a quarterback all the time in some cases. And so, it's just a more specialized role ultimately of a security analyst if we were to focus on it from the industry perspective. So it's fascinating, and that's a really good question. So yes, you would absolutely benefit, because we often see purple team. We see purple teams. Like for instance, we were working with the John Hopkins Applied Physics Lab. They do a ton of Navy contract work, including the F-18 Hornet. So we've worked with them for years. But they have blue team, red team that actually work together to form a purple team. And so they work together. They attack, defend, they find the weaknesses in the systems, and then they present solutions to make the networks more secure together. And what we found in the industry is that's probably among the best ways to secure networks ultimately. But it requires a lot of expense. So you have to usually be a very large company in order to afford, that many personnel for those purposes.
Awesome. I have 2 more questions quick about this section, and then we can move on to the exam changes. But we have a couple of questions just about, what certification to take first, or, one gentleman saying that they just applied for their CYSA certification and looking to go towards the CASP, but the CASP, another one saying, is it okay to take Security Plus before Network Plus? So obviously this is sort of this, I guess to summarize, is this the, like how rigid is this? Do you expect everyone to follow this to get Network Plus always before Security Plus? Do you ever see people taking it out of order? Should people really wait a bit to work towards, like the really advanced certification, or just kind of any advice on deviating at all from this or sticking to it?
Yes, I've talked to plenty of people that have deviated from the pathway. This is certainly just recommended, and we suggest people jump in where it makes sense for them. But typically, going from the left to the right, makes a lot of sense. However, if you're somebody that has taken, perhaps Pentest Plus, and you're looking to, take another cert and you haven't taken Security Plus, well, if you've earned Pentest Plus and you've never taken Security Plus, there's probably some things you don't know. And that is why we would recommend that you have equivalent knowledge from Security Plus. But this is certainly the recommended path. but there's people I've talked to that have gotten Security Plus that went back and took A plus. People that take a Network Plus and went back and took A plus. It's certainly recommended, but I've seen people, jump around, especially when you get up to the infrastructure pathway with Server Plus, Linux Plus, and Cloud Plus. Especially up there, even though we recommend if you're working in the cloud, it really helps to have Server Plus and Linux Plus under your belt. But you can actually take Cloud Plus and without that prereq knowledge, and you could try to take the exam and see if you could pass it. But if you don't have the prereq knowledge of some of the basics, you may not. And so that's all I have to say about that. Does that make sense, or could I expand further?
No, I think that makes sense. And we do have a lot of questions coming in, so I'll just ask one more and then we can move on to the exam portion. But we have a number of questions about ISC² and the certs that they offer. Just a few folks asking, which certs are maybe equivalent, and then also, how like their career pathway compares to the CompTIA career pathway. I guess in my opinion, I never really view the ISC² as like a pathway. It seems like their certs are more, like they have a GRC cert, and they have a admin cert, and they have the CSSP and the cloud cert. So it feels like those are more not as structured like for progression the way CompTIA does it. And that's why I really like CompTIA, especially for people starting out. But yeah, I don't know if you have any thoughts to add on how ISC² certifications compare to CompTIA and their pathway.
Right. Well, one of the things that we have to admit is that CompTIA has typically been a company that has helped people get into careers, and we've focused in the past on these entry-level certs. And just since 2016, did we start going into the intermediate level area? We did have CAS Plus back in 2012, but we didn't create this pathway essentially until 2016. As far as ISC² goes, they are more advanced in general. Their certifications are for the more advanced crowd. They did release just a certification recently called it's a certificate in cybersecurity. I think many of you have seen that, but it's more of a multiple choice terminology and concept exam. But if we look at ISC² CISSP, for example, that's really covering a lot more, management and governance. And where that would line up would be with CAS Plus, although CAS Plus is much different because CAS Plus is technical, whereas CISSP is more, it's more managerial governance based. Whereas where a CISO might take CISSP. Whereas CAS Plus, you have to be CASP Plus, you have to be very technical. I mean, it is security architecture and senior security engineering skills. And I've taken CISSP, so I can comment on this with experience. So as far as ISC² goes, yes, they're different. They're a very good company. And they have typically focused on more advanced certs. Is there another question, Jeff, out of that one?
No, I think that's good for now. We have a few other ones, but I think we want to save some time. Got 23 minutes left, so I want to make sure we get to the changes as well. So,
sure, yeah, that's the quickest part. We've gone through most of it right now. All right, so I'm going to keep going then. All right, so now we're going to talk about the exam changes. So those of you that are familiar with the old version, here's some of the changes with the new version. The good thing about reviewing these exam changes is we can see what up-to-date skills were added. In the new version, 20% of the exam objectives were updated to include updated tools. Now, I'd mentioned before about security information and event management systems, SIMs. Those have matured a lot over the last 3 to 6 years to include more automation features, more automation. And a term you need to be familiar with is SOAR. SOAR stands for Security Orchestration and Automated Response. And we see a lot of SIMs that are including SOAR. And so even though setting up SOAR usually requires programming, very complicated, we have tools available to us that can implement this. and make it easier for us as security analysts. And so there's other security analyst tools also that we talk about in this that are becoming very, very, very popular. And I know this because I was just at RSA in San Francisco, and there was so much talk about the EDRs and XDRs tools. And those are, endpoint detection response and extended detection response. And those are tools that can be used with SIMs that allow you to, essentially look at a broader scope of networks. And so, with a single pane of glass, in other words, so you might be able to see, all of the different network attack surfaces that you're monitoring, in one platform. And so this can really help because right now there's, SIMs might only be for, one area of your network, and they might not see the entire network. So these are improvements. They recently found XDR can improve by almost 30 days the detection of a breach. So 1 month is what they were discussing when we were there at RSA. And so that's impressive. Next is cloud and mobile. There's expanded coverage of cloud, mobile, and zero trust indicators of compromise. So essentially, as businesses move into the cloud, businesses start using zero trust. What that means for security analysts is that we just have different, indicators of compromise we have to be familiar with in our SIM. Because as we're looking at different network architectures, the indicators of compromise are going to look slightly different. So we have to be familiar with those in the different environments. And then threat intelligence that I mentioned, there's more of an emphasis on threat hunting topics, versus threat automation, versus threat intelligence, just so we understand how these tools can be used, and also how we can prioritize alerts for better incident response. And so for those of you that are interested, the new exam domains, there's actually one less exam domain and there's 15 fewer objectives. And the reason is as the industry has matured, as this job role has matured, we find that the tasks are becoming more focused, more concentrated, and they're dealing more with just security operations, vulnerability management, incident response, and reporting and communication. In the past, we thought there was perhaps a lot more that security analysts needed to be aware of, and so we included a lot on regulation, and we included a lot more on, compliance, and so making sure people were almost compliance analysts. What we have learned is security analysts do not need to be compliance analysts. All security analysts need to do is just report on their current work. And then that is going to be used by compliance analyst or your CISO's office, to then work with the regulators or whomever else is in charge of that at your company. It would depend. And therefore, there's 12 pages versus 15. So this is a much more focused, it's just going to cover the tasks that you need, and it's not going to cover the tasks that you don't. And 80% of the topics were similar. They just may have been tweaked a bit. So let's look at the domains. So if you look at CS0-003, that's the new exam code, exam domains on the left. And then you looked at the CS0-002 exam domains on the right. What we can see then is essentially, security operations kind of absorb two of the old domains, security operations monitoring and software and system security. The reason being is that application security, software and system security, is so important that it's now built into all four different domains. Before we separated it out, but it's integral. And so this is an instructional design improvement. And then the other domains also just were modified slightly. I would like to point out the bottom is that reporting and communication used to be compliance and assessment. But as the job has matured, as the industry has matured, and we discover what security analysts need to know and what they don't need to know, we've learned that they need to report and communicate. They don't need to be compliance analysts. So this has simplified the job for security analysts. And if we look at the exam domains, the 4 exam domains that I mentioned, one is security operations. And this is essentially where the day-to-day work gets done for security analysts. This is often where the continuous security monitoring occurs using the various tools, where we try to analyze indicators of potentially malicious activity. We then respond back to it. We also need to be aware of the threat intelligence and threat hunting concepts, and just understand how security operation works, because that's the day-to-day operations of what a security analyst does. Next is vulnerability management. This has become more important over the last 3 years because we're finding more vulnerabilities. There was nearly a 20% increase in vulnerabilities from 2021 to 2022 in our software. That means we have 20% more vulnerabilities we probably have to keep track of. And so the vulnerabilities, they don't go away. And so you have to manage them when you find one and you can't mitigate it properly. Or if you can't fix it, you're going to have to mitigate it the best you can. Right? You're going to have to lessen that exposure to the possible risk. And so vulnerability management is more important than ever. So we're going to talk about, vulnerability assessment tools, automation of those tools, which is key. We're going to talk about analyzing data, prioritizing vulnerabilities, recommending how to mitigate them, including software vulnerabilities, and explain concepts, to vulnerability response handling and management. Next area, key, incident response and management. I've had some subject matter experts tell me that security analysts really could just be called incident responders, and I found that interesting. So we look at incident response and management, realize it's a very important part of this work role. And so you have to be able to explain, different methodologies for incident response. You have to perform the activities based on different scenarios. And then you're going to have to go through the, post-incident activity phases. And the last domain is about reporting and communication, which I'd mentioned. And so you have to be good at this. And so we determine, what kind of reports are important, what kind of communication you can expect to see. And it's the reporting and communication, we're basing it on 2 different areas. That's vulnerability management and incident response, because those are the key areas security analysts have to report and communicate. So remember, this isn't about necessarily writing an essay. It's about writing a good report that's going to get the objectives that you need across to your destination. And so we talk about just techniques, the types of reports you'd be doing, very specific. All right. And lastly, just the exam details. The exam came out June 6th worldwide. The retail price is $392. It's available both at Pearson Testing View Centers, at Pearson View Testing Centers, but it's also available on View, so you can take it online. It's performance-based and multiple choice. So it's important for you to know the certification exam has performance-based questions in it. So you're actually going to be required for a multitude, there's going to be questions that come to you, perhaps a half dozen or so, that are going to be performance-based, that are scenarios where you're going to have to, point and click, find your way to solve the problem. And so it's important you know that, because exams like CEH, their certification exam is just multiple choice. So this is one thing I can think of something I just remembered that's different. CEH, their training has performance-based, but CEH's final exam, the certification exam that you actually take at Pearson View, is just multiple choice. So it's important to be aware of that. Number of questions, maximum of 85. The length of exams, 165 minutes. So it's a long one. And the languages, we've got it in English, and we're currently translating to Japanese, Portuguese, and Spanish. we've already gone over the recommended experience. As far as the exam retirement, for those of you that need to take the CS0-002 exam, the 002 version, which is the current version, that's been out for 3 years. That one's going to expire on December 5th, 2023. So make sure you take that before December 5th. All right. So that covers
I can jump
what
into
I was going to go.
Yeah, we'll cover some training resources in a second, but we do have a number of questions just about the exam. So I'll probably open up the Q&A now a little bit.
Okay.
So we have a few questions about the different versions. I believe the 002 got introduced in January. One gentleman was asking that. And then Benjamin is asking, he says that he took the CYSA exam back in 2020, which was version 1 of the exam. So he's surprised this is already the 3rd version already. But he's wondering, what do I need to do to renew my certification? A few folks, might have been certified, but it lapsed. So they're wondering, what's the best way to get recertified? Do they need to take the new exam, or how do they go about getting that CYSA again?
Okay. It all depends on if it expired or not. If it expired, you will have to take the exam again. That happened to me with Security Plus a few years ago. So you would have to take the exam again if it has expired. If it is not expired, the certification, because they're good for 3 years based on the ISO ANSI accreditation. You would then have to take CE requirements, and we actually have a CE activities page. So if you go to the CompTIA website, go to the CE activities, you just do a search for them. It will list all the activities that are that you can take to renew CYSA Plus or any CompTIA certification. So I'd recommend going to that website and exploring.
Awesome. We also have a couple of questions about, books and training materials. One relevant one here, this person was training for, the previous version of the exam. They say that they bought a book to help get prepped. They're almost finished. Any concern about, if they're going to end up taking the new exam, any gaps that they might have missed, or just any advice on how to, close those gaps so they're not missing anything that could be on the new exam?
Oh, okay. Well, if they need to take the old exam, then they should do that because it's still completely valid and would be available for 3 years, and your employer would recognize it. So have no fear in taking the existing version. However, there is that 20% of change, that has occurred. That's focusing more on the advanced tools of the SIMs that we talked about, like the XDR, the EDR, some of those, and the automation tools are pretty darned great in the new version, I've got to admit, just from observing the JTA. But that's information that you could learn and go out and study, based on some of the changes that we've just discussed here today. You'd actually know where you could go and study between the 2 different exams. So you shouldn't have an issue taking the 003 versus 002 versus 003, but just be aware of those changes and perhaps study up on the advanced features that have been added to the SIMs over the last 3 years.
Awesome. We have a couple of questions about training resources. So I might just cover this real quick, and then we can wrap up with the rest of the questions. So a few people are asking about, boot camps and how much they cost and different ways you can train. So InfoSec Institute is an authorized training partner with CompTIA. So we have really 2 ways that you can get certified. We have, probably the way that most people choose is our live boot camp. So we have this 5-day boot camp, which comes with an exam pass guarantee, which means if, I see someone asking, what happens if you don't pass, do we get a retake voucher? If you take our live boot camp, it basically includes everything you need, includes the price of the exam. And if you, were to not pass it, you get a second try, because, we like to stand by our training like that. And then we also have our on-demand platform where you'll be able to just, watch the videos and take practice exams and things like that with our InfoSec skills platform. So there's 2 ways you can train with InfoSec with these authorized CompTIA courses. And Yeah, the price. Someone's asking the price for a single user. Don't quote me on the exact amount, but our boot camps usually range anywhere from $2,000 all the way up to like $4,000. It's probably in the middle there, but we do offer discounts for different individuals or groups of people. So for sure, I think there's a bot you can check out if you want to actually talk to someone and see what discounts are available, or you can go to our bootcamp page and fill out the form to learn more about the exact pricing there. Yeah, so lots of good information there. Let's see. Yeah, I guess, do you have any recommended books or study materials, or I mean, like, obviously boot camps are great, courses are great, but you can also just self-study. You don't have to pay for anything if that's your jam. So I don't know, do you know any good books or study materials that maybe people can get at their local library, or anything like that, Patrick?
Well, it would all be a cert master or test out products at this point.
Yeah. Okay.
coming from CompTIA. Yeah,
Yeah.
but there's plenty of other resources out in the market for sure that could be researched, but I don't have any off the top of my head.
Perfect. We do have some questions on the job market, particularly. This is always an interesting question. The degrees versus certifications. Scott says that you said certifications are becoming more sought in the job market, but is it also expected that employees get education such as degrees? Probably varies by employer, I'm guessing, but I'm curious your thoughts.
Yeah. Oh, it does. But I mean, what we have found out there, that if there's two people that are equally, that have the same technical skills, but one has a college degree, the college degree person will likely get hired instead. And the reason is because they have critical thinking skills. There are certain skills tied to college degrees that are very important. However, not everyone can get a college degree. And so in instances where someone doesn't have a college degree, they're being considered for jobs nowadays, whereas they used to not be at all. So this is really great. I remember when I first started working, in the 90s, if you didn't have a college degree, you weren't getting an IT, and that has changed drastically now. Whereas, we will see, a good fraction of employers who are now willing to look at people without the college degrees. And so if you don't have a college degree, you can still get these jobs by, having certifications, and they will be considered by employers. It's always a good idea, though, once you're getting your foot in the door and you have your certification, you're into a company, it's never a bad idea to look at getting a degree as well, because it can't hurt you. It will only help you. However, certifications have now been proven, and even Apple, I think, wrote Steve Jobs wrote an article about how they were going to be looking at, I don't know if it was Steve Jobs, but it was Apple had created a page, maybe it was Tim Cook, about how they're going to be considering people with certifications, and work experience versus just college degrees. So I think we're going to have both moving forward, because both are important.
Awesome. We do have one question about our specific InfoSec boot camps from Brad. Says that he signed up for boot camp in July with InfoSec Institute and wondering what version is going to be taught. Yeah, that should be the 002 version. As Patrick mentioned, we have until December until that version's completely retired. So this webinar, we try to get on this really early with the webinars, at the front end of the 6 months, so that we can get the information out there. But I think we'll be transitioning our teaching materials in the fall to the next version of the exam. Let's see, we might have time for maybe one more question here. Yeah, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Test Out Cyber Defense Pro program. Someone took in college. They're wondering how much that's going to prepare you for the CySA Plus or CySA Plus certification.
Yes. So, CompTIA, you use the training materials from CompTIA, Jeff. And one of the areas that we've been looking at is the Cyber Defense Pro. And so in August is when we think we're going to be able to upgrade, and that's the test out product. So we're shooting to have it updated in August. And then what we would do is we would focus on the academic markets for that. So the Test Out Cyber Defense Pro is going to be intended for an academic audience. So we expect like, our community colleges, universities that are teaching CYSA Plus, they would probably look at the Test Out product, for their labs, essentially. And so we're looking forward to getting that done, but we're moving forward, with the Test Out products in lockstep. So that will be available soon. It's just a little behind the CertMaster labs.
Awesome. Yeah, we're out of time. I know there's a few questions we didn't get to, but hopefully you all enjoyed Patrick's expertise and learned a lot in this presentation. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us at InfoSec Institute. Talk to anyone. I'm happy to connect with people and answer the questions, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I don't know if you have any recommendations if people want to connect with you, Patrick, or learn more about CompTIA. Should they just go to the website? You want people to reach out to you? Anything there?
Oh, sure. They can go to CompTIA, .org, and then I'm on LinkedIn as Patrick Lane. If anyone would like to connect with me on LinkedIn, I'd love to connect.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for joining today. Appreciate it. We'll be doing actually ramping up our webinar program. We had a pretty busy in-person event season, but we'll be doing a lot more live webinars coming up. So stay on the lookout. You can always check out our events page, infosecinstitute.com/events, for our upcoming live podcasts and live webinars. But with that, we will wrap up. Nice seeing everybody. Adios.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.